Hello everyone, this is Jeremy Eason from ISA 42200 and this is my vulnerability assessment presentation. Alright guys, the purpose of this presentation is to walk through how I discovered two previously unidentified servers within my lab environment and the initial vulnerabilities associated with them. Although my goal was to perform a complete vulnerability assessment, technical issues with Greenbone prevented the scan from running successfully. As a result, this presentation will focus on the investigative process I follow, the troubleshooting steps taken to diagnose and resolve Greenbone issues, and how these efforts set the stage for a full assessment moving forward. So my first step was to run a scan and find the hidden IPs. As we already have our Windows server and our Linux server and the 250 IP address that the class already knows about. I found 192.168.1.1 as a hidden server and 1.20 as a hidden server as well. The next step of this process was to perform an Nmap scan. The scan results clearly identified 1.30 as a Linux server, and some key indicators that confirmed this included port 22, which had Open Secure Shell running, which is standard on Linux servers, and it also had operating system detection results, with Nmap's fingerprinting identified the system as running a Linux kernel, and it displayed Linux-specific service information. I then performed the same Nmap scan on the 1.1 service, and I ran into a little bit of difficulty. I'm assuming it's supposed to be a Windows operating system, IP, because that's what was displayed in the directions. But it didn't say that clearly, so we're just assuming for now. My guess is that maybe you had a firewall configuration that blocked operating system's fingerprinting attempts, or it could be something else. Now that I had successfully discovered and identified the two hidden servers through my Nmap scan, I was ready to proceed with the Greenbone vulnerability scanning process. I started the process by doing the configuration and the targets and creating two separate targets for my discovered IPs. But an unfortunate situation happened. After clicking the start button to launch my vulnerability scans, I encountered a persistent and frustrating issue. My Greenbone scans were repeatedly getting interrupted at a 0% progress no matter how many times I attempted to run them. So instead of panicking and giving up and just being sad that Greenbone isn't working, I decide to take the matter in my own hands and fix the issue. I first ran a GVM check setup in the terminal to detect any problems. I did this by running sudo GVM check setup into the command, and my installation was okay. I had no problems with that. The next logical step in my troubleshooting process was to verify that Greenbone Vulnerability Manager Scanner service was active and running properly. A malfunctioning or stopped scanner service could easily explain why my scans were failing to progress beyond 0%. To check this, I ran sudo gvm start, and I was glad to discover that there were no issues with my scanner service and it was running. With the scanner service verified as operational, I was able to rule out service failure as the cause of my scan interruption. This meant that the issue likely resided elsewhere in the system, prompting me to continue my investigation into other potential causes. So after my previous attempts at finding what was wrong with my Greenbone scan, I was really close to losing hope and thinking I would never find out what was wrong. But then I found the problem. My next step was to investigate the database services that Greenbone relies on to function properly, which is PostgreSQL, and it serves as the primary database back for storing vulnerability definitions, scans, configurations, and results. I checked its status by running the following command: sudo systemctl status postgre. The output confirmed that PostgreSQL was active and running without any issues. However, this investigation led me to examine other critical services that Greenbones depends on. I found out that the problem was that my Redis server was inactive. And as you can see on the picture I provided, you will see that it says active and exited. For my PostgreSQL service, but for, as you see in the Redis server, it says inactive and dead. So that was something that I would need to fix in order to get my Greenbone vulnerability scan. Alright, now I'm going to explain to you guys on how I fixed this issue. Before I go over my picture, I would like to inform you guys that Redis is a very important feature that facilitates communication between the OpenVAS scanner and Greenbone Vulnerability Manager. This could explain why my scans were consistently failing at 0%. Alright, to start off, I ran sudo systemctl start Redis server. And what this did was just make sure that the Redis server was in my system. And then I did sudo systemctl enable Redis server. Those two commands activated my Redis server and it configured the server to automatically start Redis during my boot. After executing these commands, I wanted to verify that the Redis server was now active and running. So I ran sudo systemctl status Redis server and that displayed all the information that I needed to know that my Redis server was active and running. Alright, so even though I found out that my Redis server wasn't working, I still wanted to check for more issues before I started my Greenbone vulnerability scan. I decided to check for scanner errors in the log by entering sudo tel 20 var log gvm ospd openvas log. And luckily, I had no problems and my vulnerability test was updated and ready to go. As you can see in the picture, I can walk you through the steps. It shows all the details, but at the very bottom, that's where I got the configuration that my vulnerability test was ready and I had no issues. After successfully resolving the Redis server issue, I was optimistic that my vulnerability scans would now function correctly. I restarted the Greenbone Vulnerability Manager by running sudo gvm stop followed by sudo gvm start to ensure all servers were properly initialized with the now active Redis server. Once the web interface loaded at https://127.0.0-19392, I logged back in and navigated to the scans tags to launch my previously configured scan tags for the hidden servers. Unfortunately, despite fixing the Redis server issue, I encountered the same frustrating problems as before. My vulnerability scans were still being interrupted at 0% progress and would not advance beyond the initial stage. The scan would briefly display a running status before quickly changing to interrupted without making any progress. This was particularly discouraging because I had identified and resolved what appeared to be a critical service dependency issue. The fact that the scans continued to fail indicated that there were additional underlying problems preventing Greenbone from completing the vulnerability assessment. At this point, I realized that troubleshooting complex systems often involves addressing multiple issues rather than a single root cause. Fixing one problem does not always guarantee that the system will function correctly, as there may be additional underlying issues that need to be resolved. This experience reinforced the importance of persistence and systematic problem solving when working with enterprise security tools. I continued my investigation by reviewing additional logs and checking other service dependencies to identify any remaining issues that could be causing the scan failures. As we wrap up this presentation, I want to share with you guys what I learned from this process. The process of discovering my hidden servers, running into issues with Greenbone, detecting and fixing the errors with my Redis server, and then still not being able to use Greenbone vulnerability server taught me a great deal about problem solving in the IT field. I developed a deeper understanding of how complex security tools rely on multiple interconnected services and dependencies to function properly. I also learned the importance of systematic troubleshooting, which involves methodically checking each component of a system rather than making random changes and hoping for the best. Even though I was ultimately unable to complete the Greenbone's vulnerability scan, the troubleshooting process itself was incredibly educational. I gained hands-on experience with essential Linux system administration commands such as systemctl for managing services, log analysis techniques, and a deeper understanding of how services like PostgreSQL and Redis support security scanning tools. Most importantly, the experience reinforced a critical lesson about working in IT and cybersecurity. You must always expect the unexpected and be prepared to adapt when things do not go according to plan. The ability to troubleshoot, research, and preserve through unexpected obstacles is an essential skill for any IT professional. I believe that the alternate approach I had to take taught me just as much, if not more, than a straightforward successful scan would have. And if you want to take a look at any of my sources, here they are.